Got that?
All right. And Vehicle Systems Forensics Investigator. All right, everyone. Welcome to the next session. Actually, this is really cool what's going on here. Noel Lowdon, who is a vehicle forensics, or how do I even say that correctly, Noel?
Vehicle Systems Forensics Investigator.
Thank you, sir. He's
No worries.
got a really cool job. And I think he spends a lot of his time reverse engineering vehicles and incidents and so on. And he's going to give us an insight today about what he does. And his title for the talk is Vehicle System Forensics: Secure Our Streets Back to the Future. So, Noel, thank you for being here. The
No
stage
problem.
is
Thanks, John.
yours, sir.
Cheers. Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. This presentation is entitled Back to the Future. If you can imagine, it is the 26th of October 1985 for those people who have seen the movie. We're just going to take a little bit of a look over our shoulder and start to head back, not as far as 1959, and to add on 1955 as it is in the movie, but just over our shoulders to some recent times of some automotive vehicles that have been in circulation a couple of years, where we've used data from those vehicles to assist in serious crime and serious collision investigations. What I want to do is sort of just step aside from the automotive cybersecurity scene and just see that the systems that have been developed as a byproduct of those systems are helping to detect serious criminal and collision cases, certainly here in the UK and globally. So, albeit we're securing our streets from a mobility point of view, we are also looking to secure our streets from some of the incidents that vehicles find themselves involved in through either serious crime or serious collision investigations as well. And my background stems really from forensic collision investigation and dealing with fatal road collisions on behalf of the police. And one of my colleagues used to have a strapline of picking up the pieces professionally. And I guess that's what we're kind of doing with vehicle system forensics in regards to all the systems that have been developed and being put onto new vehicles as we go through such an interesting time in the automotive sector. Is a byproduct of all those systems. They're leaving behind a trail of data that we are picking up professionally to piece together what's gone on in an incident. And today I'm going to take you through a couple of case studies to show you how those systems and the byproducts of those systems have assisted to detect some serious crime and serious collision investigations. So as we keep motoring forwards into the future, and you guys in the automotive cybersecurity sector who are developing all these solutions to create the great vehicles that we have on the road, leaving in your wake is, data that can assist us when we're investigating serious crime and serious collisions. So it's just to maybe if you are involved in automotive cybersecurity and you're looking to make these systems safe for security, just also just be mindful of how these systems might be used as well from securing our streets. So who am I? My name's Noel Lowdon. I run a company here in the UK called Harper Investigation Consultants, and we essentially support law enforcement in the main with regards to vehicle system forensics examinations. We're a registered experts on the National Crime Agency's database, which means law enforcement can tap into our services as and when they need it, case by case dependent. I've just recently set up a project called the Vehicle Network, which is a resource hub and training platform with regards to modern automotive investigations. That is an app that is currently in both app stores, and that is very much in its infancy, but it is starting to build as we go forward. And my background is as a detective in serious crime and complex collision investigations, mainly involving deaths here in the UK. I just want to highlight Doctor Edmond Locard. There is the Doc famously in the Back to the Future films, but we're not going to talk about him today. Doctor Edmond Locard, for those people who aren't aware, was a French criminologist, and he sort of coined the phrase of every contact leaves a trace. And when we look at this from a forensic point of view, from when it was originally established. A suspect will potentially go into a crime scene and they will leave a trace of some description, whether that be a fingerprint or they will take something away from the crime scene as well that can be assisted in detecting crimes further down the line when we start to look at forensic evidence. But the same still applies today in 2022 in all investigations, that every contact does leave a trace. We need to be mindful of this as investigators when we are looking at doing either digital investigations or examining crime scenes, because we can also leave a trace as we are doing our work, and we need to be mindful of that as we're doing it. And it is really prevalent in digital investigations as well. And we're going to see that in a couple of these presentations that I'm going to move into now. Okay, so this first case I'm going to talk about has just concluded actually at court here in the UK. The suspects are still waiting to be sentenced. They have been found guilty, so spoiler alert in this particular scenario. But this is a 2018 Nissan X-Trail. It was a stolen vehicle and it was used by a gang here in the UK that go by the name of Armed Response. That gang stems from around the sort of 80s time, but has been really prevalent under that name since 2016. The incident happened on the 18th of November last year, so just under 12 months ago. It was in the Birmingham district, and we had a 13-year-old child that was left paralyzed, having been shot in the back, having strayed into the wrong area of town, onto the Armed Response gang's turf, as it was. This vehicle was used at the time of the incident, and the suspects were in the vehicle, and they used firearms in order to cause injury to this individual. So it's treated as an attempt murder investigation, and we were asked to investigate this vehicle as to what it might be able to give us with regards to assisting in detecting this particular crime. So quite a serious incident. A 13-year-old left paralyzed as a result of gun crime, just for essentially being in the wrong area of town, really, and using a stolen vehicle at the time. So when we go to do an examination of a vehicle, we have to have a plan before we go. And there are four foundations to carrying out this type of work. One is the planning. The second is the examination at the vehicle itself. The third is component examination. And then the fourth is the reporting of what we've found during those planning, vehicle examinations and component examinations. So when we get to the vehicle, because it is a stolen vehicle, there are no keys with it, because the suspects have made off, from the scene with the keys for the vehicle. Whilst some spares are always in existence, they often get sent to insurance companies. And in this case, we were just not met with any cooperation to get the keys repatriated to the vehicle. And this can cause us some issues because we want to be able to, power the vehicle on to get all the systems awake if we can, in order to be able to interrogate some of those systems. And certainly in this case, the main area of the vehicle we're looking at on this case is the infotainment system, which you can see in the center of the photograph there. And we want to be able to power that on, because this system, sometimes we have a non-destructive solution to be able to recover data from those infotainment modules. But this one was one we'd not encountered before, and we knew that we would have to be potentially destructive with it and remove chips from circuit boards in order to be able to read them. And in order to understand the data that we see on those chips, we want to be able to corroborate that with what we know it to be from a user interface perspective. So we would ideally want to power that unit on, look at some of the menus with regards to recent enter destination or paired devices, and be able to corroborate that when we see things in the data, that's exactly what they are. And sometimes we get more information from doing that type of examination than we do from a chip, or vice versa. So we attempted to bypass the ignition, but ultimately on this particular vehicle, the infotainment system wasn't seeing the right CAN signals in order for us to be able to get that powered on. due to the immobilizer on that system. So we were straight to removing that infotainment module from the vehicle to then assessing what data storage might be on there. One of the other things that we'd like to power the vehicle on for as well is to do a time check and to corroborate the times that we're getting from some of these systems is correct. As people in the audience have no doubt will be aware, there are many different timing sources on a vehicle, whether it's, run time, whether it's local time from GPS, or whether it's a manual setting on the vehicle with regards to somebody being able to manipulate the time setting. For those people that have an interest to delve into those menus to change them over or to change the time, and we've got to understand where the data is coming from when we look at time, and that was quite important in this particular case as well. So when we've got that infotainment module out of the vehicle and it's on our bench, then we can find various different storage mediums within infotainment systems. Sometimes we see hard drives, sometimes we see embedded SD cards, and sometimes we see chips. On this unit, we had an eMMC chip, which was 4GB micron. That had to be removed from the circuit board by a process known as chip off, which for those that aren't familiar just means heating that chip up to be able to get it off the unit. And there is a risk that it can be damaged in that process. Hence the reason for wanting to do like a manual examination on the screen in case we encounter difficulties at that point. But we successfully removed that chip from the unit. And as soon as we have been able to do that, we can then sometimes work out where the data can be extracted without having to take the chip off if we see that unit again through a process called ISP or direct eMMC reads. And we were able to do that with this case. So if we did get another case involving that type of vehicle or that particular head unit, then we would be able to do it non-destructively. And that can be a big factor for us, because if people are being destructive by taking chips off board and people are wanting to give these vehicles back to people, then it's another cost implication. So we were able to look at the data that was on this chip and start to reconstruct that. And in some unallocated space, we found Bluetooth entries, so profiles. If you see on the left-hand side, right at the very top, we've got profile 3, and within profile 3, coming halfway down, we have a Bluetooth address with a Bluetooth MAC address for a device, and underneath that we have a Bluetooth name, which is a friendly name for that particular device as well. Excuse me. And then when we start to come a little bit further down the list towards the bottom, we can see a time paired, which is the 18th of November 21, 16:46, 46 hours, and time last connect, 18th of the 11th 21, 19:03:03. So that's really important because of the time of this particular shooting. I think was around, from memory, around 6:45 in the evening. So that is essentially putting a device into the vehicle with that Bluetooth MAC address that is attributed to one of the suspect's devices that was recovered in the investigations by the police. And it starts to build a richer intelligence and evidential picture to say that not only was that device associated with that vehicle, but it was associated with that vehicle at the time of the offence itself. So whereby in the past we might have examined the stolen vehicle because it's been involved in the shooting and suspects have made off, then we would have a fingerprint, but we might not know when that fingerprint's being left. Here we have the digital device being in the vehicle at the time of the incident itself. We have a last connect and time paired phrase within the data, and we need to know what the meaning of that is with regards to what does time paired mean? Does it mean that that's the first time the device was paired and it's never been in the vehicle before? Does it pair on every connection? And what does time last connect mean? Does that mean that that's the last time that the device was seen in the vehicle? or does it mean that that's the time it last connected and it still could be in the vehicle? Because when we're looking at times around the time of the offence and suspects potentially making off, then we need to be able to be certain, and this comes down to data interpretation of what those phrases mean. So those people that are developing some systems, and software engineers will have developed this, we can all perhaps give different interpretations, those people in the audience, as to what they think time last connect means. But without doing some actual testing and running a device in the vehicle or getting some comment from the software engineers that have developed that, then we don't know for sure what those phrases precisely mean on that particular system. And in this case, people from the police did go to Nissan and made the approach to ask them what they meant. And the comment back was that they weren't even aware that this type of data was being stored on that system. You've got to understand that there is a tier 1 provider to Nissan for this particular system. And you may not expect Nissan to know that that's on there, tongue-in-cheek perhaps a little bit, but nonetheless, we never got a definitive answer from them. The tier 1 provider had changed for Nissan at the time of the inquiry, because obviously the vehicle's been in production a number of years, and they didn't have a relationship to be able to approach them. Was the response we got from that particular inquiry. Another area of the chip, we had a SQLite database. For those people that are familiar with SQLite databases, and these relate to the USB connection. So in addition to a Bluetooth connection going onto that vehicle, we've got people plugging into USB ports with the devices as well. And on the top 2 records of this particular screenshot, we've serial numbers with devices that are attributed again to suspects that have been had devices seized either from them or from their addresses in the investigation. So again, on that far right column, we've got last connect, and that time intersperses with the times that the Bluetooth connections were on the last page as well. So we're starting to build up a richer picture now, because obviously we could have a Bluetooth connection to the vehicle at the same time that it's plugged in by a cable as well. And we can start to narrow that down. And those devices, IDs 173 and 182 that are on the 3rd column along the top 2, those were related to and attributed to suspects. When we look at the relational database of the SQLite, not only do we have those serial numbers for the unique identifiers for the device, but it links through to some of the media that's come on as well from those devices. And I appreciate the screenshots are a little bit hard to see, but that track that's highlighted in the center there has come over from one of those 2 devices. It's a track entitled Wheelers. And this is a track that has been produced by some of the gang members. So they make a lot of rap music and post that online. So we can see on the right hand side, that is a video of the track that is on that infotainment system that's been produced by that group. And you can see the hat, which has got the letters AR for the Armed Response Gang. So it's further attribution that those devices, as well as a serial number, and we can link those back the other way. But I think we're over 2,000 records of tracks that have been put onto that infotainment system as well. And generally, we wouldn't think of music detecting serious crime, but in this case, it really just shows you how you can perhaps think outside the box. And I'm sure your imaginations can go exponential when you look at some of the entertainment features that we're putting in a modern vehicle now, as to how that might link back to assisting some investigations. So those 3 pieces of evidence were key in attributing those suspects to that vehicle, but not only to that vehicle at the time of the offence as well, due to those connections. But we had to be careful with how we reported that, and certainly at court, we don't want to be misleading around those phrases of last connect and time paired, etc. John has just messaged me. I've only got 5 minutes left. I'm trying to get through as quickly as I can, but I will have some time in the booth afterwards if people have got questions. I'm going to quickly rattle through this because it's not data that's really surprising. Crash data from a vehicle involved in a fatal collision. Now, these types of incidents happen every day all over the world, unfortunately, and far too often do they happen, I'm afraid to say, but a lot of them go unreported or unnoticed, but people have died. This is an Audi A4 on a 2018 plate that ended up veering across the carriageway and hit another vehicle head-on before then hitting another vehicle beyond that one and killing the occupant of that second vehicle. So there was a slight overlap and crossover, offside to offside, driver to driver, with an Audi A4, the vehicle pictured, against an Audi A5. It then subsequently went on to hit a, I think it was a Toyota RAV4. Now, on these vehicles at the time, they were produced, data from the airbag control module for pre-speed, impact, etc. was not available. However, there was some information within the header to say what time the airbag control module was activated. And the important thing here for us was the fact that the airbag control module had recorded the time that it had activated at 21:30, 1:25 hours on this day. When we then go to interrogate some of the other ECUs, on the engine ECU on this Audi A4, we have, you can see these two fault codes at the same time as the airbag was activated. A couple of faults. One, the throttle position sensor has got an implausible signal. Well, that's directly wired from the engine ECU to the throttle pedal itself. The vehicle's been hit at the offside, and the airbag control module has gone off at that time. We've got engine speed of 1566. And we've got a vehicle speed of 122 kilometers per hour. This is what we would term freeze frame data in forensic collision investigation. So it's just a snapshot in time. At the same time, we've also got another fault with an implausible signal from the ABS control module. And we've got a speed at that time of 113 kilometers an hour. So there's 5 miles an hour difference. But what we don't know is at what period in that second that those values have been recorded. What we do know is that the engine speed is slightly lower with the lower speed, so it may be that that is later in the crash as the vehicle is slowing down. We have to, again, check for plausibility as to whether or not these speeds could be accurate. We have to check the ABS ECU for why it's had an implausible signal. But if I jump back to the pictures, you will see that the wheels are missing off these vehicles. So that could be a reason why we've an implausible record in the digital side of things as well. And because we like to maximize data opportunities from vehicles, we also recovered the front ADAS camera from this vehicle and the infotainment module, because we know that that infotainment module on the Audi A4 can record journey history. So we will be able to put together a richer picture with regards to how the vehicle was being driven over a longer distance leading up to that particular crash. The ADAS camera was checked with regards to what chips are on there in order to see what images are available for people to we know that certain vehicles, Teslas, some Toyotas are recording snapshot images in the leads up to crashes as well, but we didn't find any on that particular vehicle. Looking at plausibility again, we've got to look at some of the other systems that this vehicle has with pre-sense city fitted to it, one of the automated or assisted driver assistance systems, you know, where the vehicle's automatically braking for itself. This vehicle is essentially veered across the carriageway, or the driver has reported a black dog running out or some sort of animal running out, causing him to go across the carriageway. Would this system have come into play because of an object coming in front of it? Well, if the speeds are right within the freeze frame data, the operating capability of that feature is only up to 85 kilometers per hour. So we maybe wouldn't expect it to activate. But people are going to ask these questions: why didn't the car automatically brake? And we've got to look at why. And we are then met with the defence, who get to examine these particular scenarios for us and check our data as to whether or not what we're doing is right. And after 25 paragraphs of critique, shall we say, of our report, the defence in this case said that the speeds could not be relied upon. We then, as a rebuttal to that, find some research that's been done previously with regards to full-scale crash testing where freeze frame data has been used, and in particularly on VW vehicles as well. And in those 10 crash case studies they've found to be more than accurate with regards to known testing instruments as well to validate that. Those 25 points that the defence raised were then quickly forgotten, and they agreed the evidence in this particular case, and the driver was found guilty of causing death by careless driving. And that wraps things up. I will be available for questions and answers in the booth afterwards. If anybody's got any questions, then by all means fire them in, or I can pick up with people post-event.
Noel, thank you for the great presentation. So interesting what you do every day. We do have some questions. Unfortunately, we'll only have time for one of them. And I'm just going to go ahead and show this real quick. Based on UNECE R155, our processes may lead to measures which prevents data extraction that you've shown here. Do you think the legislator may force us in the future to leave back doors for crime investigation and so on?
Yeah, I think well, there has to be a collective between law enforcement and the and the OEMs and the manufacturers really as to how this is managed, going forward, because people will try and exploit the data if they can, and we know that from work that we've done, and as you've seen in the presentation. I have to confess, I don't know what UNECE R155 is, so I'll have to, look that up and come back to you on that. But yeah, I mean, I had the poll there as to whether or not law enforcement should have access to this personal data to be used to assist in crime investigation. But I guess the ethos of the presentation is this: you're going to be developing, and systems are already in development that are going to be on vehicles, and it's how we manage that data. And they need to go through a standard protocol for potentially releasing it. It's no different to the telecoms world, where in the past the police have got details of people's phone usage, and again, in the first instance, nobody wanted to disclose that, but it's all done and managed through a single point of contact that work with law enforcement now, and I think you will see that developing over time in the automotive industry.
Great. Yeah. And Noel, you'll be available for some chat afterwards on the networking lounge tables, correct?
Yep, that's fine. Yep, no problem at all.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Noel. And we have a short break for 30 minutes or a little bit less, 26 minutes before the next session starts. All right. See you then.
Cheers. Thank you.